Let's get ready to rumble!
Welcome to Boxing Unwrapped.
It's Boxing Unwrapped, causing more questions than Dillian Whyte's urinalysis. I'm Ryan.
I'm Andrew.
And welcome to What the F is the Boxing News, guys, the show where we give you everything you need to know from last week's fights, what fights to watch this week, and all the other drama that's going on in boxing.
No, there's a lot of drama, mama.
There's a lot of drama, man, and we'll get into it. So, Andy, do you want to tell the good people what we've got in store for them?
I do, yeah. So, we have a lot to cover this week. We will cover the results from last week, and there are a few things to go over, particularly the stuff that happened stateside. There's actually a fair few of the old fights going on this weekend of varying quality and interest, as per usual. We have a little bit to cover in terms of what the F went wrong last week. Not too much, just a little bit. There's some random news, some hot news, some drugs taking news, some news. We will cover. Obviously, we will cover what grinds our gears this week, and we will round off with a little bit of listener corner.
Well, yeah, because this could possibly be our last podcast. It could be, because, guys, at the weekend, Andy and I are venturing into the hills. And the last time we did this, I almost died, right? I did. True story.
Is it still fresh in the memory? It's like one of these climbing adventure films.
It totally was. Andy saved my life. Stopped me from falling literally 50 feet down a crevasse.
No, it was more than 50
yeah,
feet. It was more like 200 feet.
Fucking ridiculous. And then, do you remember the following day on Ben Nevis when we went over that fucking ridge? I got vertigo.
You had flashbacks.
I fucking did, man. I did.
Started shaking, and you were like, I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel right anymore. But you were fine.
So if you hear stories in the news about two unprepared Scotsmen getting lost in the hills, you found them.
Send out the search party.
So, anyway, without further ado, let's dive into what could be the last. What the F are the results from last week?
So, should we start in sunny Texas?
Yeehaw! Yeah, we should.
So, one of the fights that we flagged last week was the heavyweight debut of Murat Gassiev versus Joey Joachko. Now, this fight didn't go ahead. It was cancelled, I think, relatively late on. Gassiev pulled out with a shoulder injury, so that one was postponed. So, I'm going to put it there as opposed to in what the F went wrong, just to say that we're in the talking about the results. This wasn't a result, but it's a result that could have been a result if it wasn't a non-result.
And it's a bad result for Gassiev.
It's a bad result for Gassiev, yeah. He's been inactive now for quite some time, though.
Totally, but, you got to think, so is Usyk. And he also had, he had a bicep injury, didn't he, just before his big debut at heavyweight.
Yeah, so Usyk will be out, well over a year.
Yeah, totally.
I think, I suppose Gassiev's the same. Unless he had a sort of minor comeback fight. Moving up the card then, Tevin Farmer versus Guillaume Frenois.
Frenois!
Frenois! Oh, Frenois! Où est le boxing, Frenois?
Well, unfortunately for Frenois, he did not manage to overpower Tevin Farmer. No surprise to anyone, really. But solid points win for Farmer, actually. If you go on his box rec, he's suspended by the Texas Combative Sports Program until the 9th of September.
Right, someone needs to explain this to me, because whenever someone fights, I've noticed this a few times on box rec. Whenever someone fights, immediately afterwards, they always have a notice, a ticker tape at the top of their box rec page saying they're suspended for X number of weeks or months or years. What's that all about? Is it like part of the condition of fighting is you can't fight again within a set period of time.
Maybe there must be something to do with their license. Who the fuck knows?
How do we not know this?
I don't know. We can Google it. One for next week.
Yeah. Yes. Here, this was the other one. I'm skipping about, right? But BoxRec also says that Richard Comey is suspended until Christmas by the Californian State Athletic Commission.
I saw that as well.
Obviously, so what's that all about? That seems a very long time for someone that won and didn't have any like knockdown or concussion or anything. I don't know. We need to look at this more
in depth.
Tell us the answer if you know it, listeners.
Yeah. So anyway, very good for Tevin Farmer.
So Tevin Farmer, he won and won at a canter. There's a question mark. So Tevin Farmer. The obvious fight that people were talking about getting made is him fighting everyone's favourite idiot, who we can talk about in a second. Now,
he got called out by him after his fight.
Yeah. So, Farmer's really like a slick, complete boxer, but he doesn't have very much power. I think that's the question: is could he live with Davis's power? Because he is a big puncher, whereas Farmer only has 6 wins by KO out of his 30 wins. So he's more of a boxer than a puncher. And whether that would stack up well against the very heavy-handed and heavy-set Gervonta Davis is the question. Probably not.
Now, Jose Ramirez versus Maurice Hooker. A shock defeat for Hooker, actually. I think like most people were expecting him to win on points. Paddy Power actually got it wrong. They did like an article on what your good bets for boxing this weekend is, and they were like, oh yeah, Maurice Hooker on points is a totally safe bet. But it wasn't. Because Ramirez absolutely destroyed Hooker from the off, actually.
I think people were expecting to be competitive. No, I would have said I thought Ramirez would have been a slight favourite, but I don't think it would have expected to be the demolition job that it turned into.
Oh my god! And the knockout was unreal. Absolute. It was really, really interesting fight. Like Jose Ramirez, like he just seemed to kind of move and overpower Hooker. Hooker didn't seem to have his balance from anywhere. He was so gamely the whole time, and I think he just couldn't get into his stride, and Ramirez just totally overpowered him. It was good. It was a good fight. It was a really good fight.
So the chat now is about Ramirez fighting the winner of the World Boxing Super Series final between our boy Josh Taylor and the inimitable Regis Prograis.
Now, but I was actually thinking about this upon his win.
Okay.
And I think no matter who wins that final, we all know we want it to be Josh Taylor, but I mean, we know how unbelievably good Prograis is. I think both of them take Ramirez. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think that Prograis is just so good that there's no way Ramirez would touch him, and I think Josh Taylor's just got much more like kind of style and tricks in his book. Like he can deal with being overpowered. He knows how to deal with fighters who like to smother. Like when Baranchek came out. Yeah. So I think Josh Taylor wins as well. So I think it's safe to say that all the belts are going to be coming back to Scotland.
We're not any closer to an announcement about that, are we?
Of course we're not, man. This is the problem with the World Boxing Super Series. It just fucking so slow.
Where's the momentum? I know. Anyway, Ramirez lies in wait, potentially, for the winner of that. And that would be, I guess, if he did fight the winner of that, then that would be a kind of conclusive, this is the best in the division kind of moment. But I mean, whether or not the winner of that is going to want to dive straight into fighting another high-level guy, they might want a wee break, they might want a wee rest, go Ibiza, drink some Strongbow, you know what I'm saying?
Of course, man, of course. So
that's what I'd do.
I would too, man. I would too.
Except it wouldn't be Ibiza or Strongbow, but apart from that, I would do exactly the same.
I know. A nice mojito on the beach, somewhere classy.
Where can you go which has got like beautiful kind of golden sandy beaches and palm trees, but they also serve like top end craft beer. Would be
At the north,
Does that such a place?
Yeah, it does. It's on the northwest coast of Scotland.
Sat there with your craft beer, and your testicles were drawn up into your body because it's so fucking cold.
But you do have white sandy beaches.
But, well, it's true. I can attest to that. You can't look at them for too long because you've got wind burn and sand blasting your eyeballs. I can actually attest to that, as I did it last month. But anyway, it's very picturesque for all the 10 minutes you can stand to be on the fucking beach.
Yeah.
Anyway, I do Scotland a disservice. Some people made of sturdier stuff. Should we move on to the showtime card in Berry?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
The only fight. Well, let's talk about Gervonta Davis, Ricardo Nunes. This went in an entirely predictable and relatively uninteresting way.
Of course it did. And Gervonta Davis overpowered him, destroyed him. You know, pretty nasty. But man, you know what? The thing is, right? It just gives Gervonta Davis more like cred in his own head. You know how wonderful he is.
When he goes to bed, he's got cred in his own head.
On his pillow,
He's
made
not well read.
made of like dollar bills.
He'd have to fluff them up. He'd have to take them out of the clips and like fluff them up to make them scrunch them up to make them a comfortable pillow.
I don't think he'd mind that actually.
No,
He's a prick. But yeah, so
Right.
it happened. He's an idiot. You know.
He is right, but here's the annoying thing about Gervonta Davis. I know he is relatively young, isn't he? What is he? 24, 22 fights in. He won his belt in his 17th fight against Jose Pedraza. Jose Pedraza was the champ, obviously. High level guy, fine, no issue with that. He's fought 5 times since, and he's fought no one really of any note. They've all kind of been a bit rubbish, and especially this last opponent, Nunes, was definitely not very good. So he's getting protected now. Even so, like you can't have, we've spoken before, and even some people will say like, oh well, you can have like one fight, like a big high level one, and then you get a kind of almost like a gimme, and then a high level one, then a gimme. He's done one in his career. He's had one high level fight, and then he's had 5 much lower level fights in a row.
Yeah.
Like, what's he doing? Like, come on, like let's legacy build. It's long enough, and he's going, oh, Mayweather's like, oh, he's a pay-per-view fighter and all this stuff. Well, he needs to start stepping up and fighting guys and demonstrating that he's, one of the super high level guys. Rather than just beating people he's expected to beat. He can't do that for the next 5 years, can he? I mean, he can, but it's boring as fuck.
Yeah, totally. It is indeed, But, like, it brings in his cash. Do you know what I mean? He's got no incentive because he's still getting tons of cash. And he's still got tons of people saying, oh, you're so fucking good. He needs someone to kick his ass. But he's not going to get that because he's getting so protected. So they need, like, someone needs to be like a ringer for Gervonta Davis, like look really shit as a way of like getting closer and closer to Gervonta Davis, and then fucking knocking him out because you're actually really good.
And they'd be like whip off the mask, and it's actually Lomachenko. Yes. Be like, surprise, fucker!
Totally. Anyway, who knows what's going on with Gervonta Davis?
I'd like him to fight some of the people he called out. That's what I would like him to do, rather than just calling out everyone and his mother and then fighting a tomato can. Fight Belcher. Fight Miguel Belcher. Fight him. He's real good.
He is real good. But that's the problem is he's too good. We need someone who looks like they're not that good, but is then very good. Or that like people in the States don't actually know that much about.
Well, here's the thing though. I don't know off the top of my head, but like, which one of the guys that he's fought is his mandatory? Since when has he had a mandatory? So he was the IBF champion, and then did he vacate it because he's then the WBA super champion? But like, he's had 3 fights against like low level guys. So WBA probably doesn't work. They need to make him fight someone decent.
Yeah.
call him mandatory. Call it a mandatory against someone good. Stop mucking around. Jeez.
Well, shall we move on then to the newest part of the show, the 6 degrees of Danny Williams.
Oh man!
Right, I've got one for you this week. Right, I've got one, and I think you might get it. Okay.
I'm not gonna get it.
Right. So we start with.
I fucking hate this segment.
Ike Ibebuchi. And get to Danny Williams.
I can't remember who he fought. He's the crazy guy.
Yeah, he is the crazy guy. The president.
He's the president. Right, who was his barnstorming fight against? Tua?
Yes.
Is that
one of the steps, yeah. Yes, you're right.
And then he fought Danny Williams?
Yes, you're right.
Yes! Get him!
There you go, man. There you go.
I tell you what, this is great. I love this feature. It's my favourite part of the show every week. I don't dread it or nothing.
Honestly, man. There you go, right? Like, I mean, I'm telling you, Danny Williams is connected to everybody, no matter how remote they are, right? Listeners, if you have a suggestion about the 6 degrees of Danny Williams, please fire it along, because it's a fucking thing. It is a thing, right? Because I think, actually, if you even stretched it out into things like promoters as well, right? So like the real 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, where you know people who know people, not just boxers. I mean, Danny Williams knows fucking everybody within 6 degrees.
You could try and next week do it with a cruiserweight to give me a challenge.
Done.
Okay.
Done. We can do that. We can do that, actually. So.
Okay.
Great. So, well, with that little interlude over, let's move on to what the F are the fights this weekend?
Where do you want to start? Should we start on Friday night?
Let's start Friday night.
Spin around. Is this a next gen card?
Yeah,
is that what they call
I think
it?
It is, because it's a Friday. They call it next gen. The interesting thing about this is, what I feel is this is they were next gen, but then lost fights. Now not next gen.
This should, this should be Struggle for Redemption.
Yeah, totally.
Not as catchy, but much more accurate. Yeah. It's or it could just be called Levels ? Gen.
Totally. Friday, August, DAZN or Sky Sports. Anthony Fowler is against Brian Rose. Now, we'll probably remember Anthony Fowler from his last fight. He's coming off this kind of sad loss. He was like a bit of an up and coming super welter, but he had his all English affair, which was really, really hyped because they had all of this. Remember they had this round robin with Cheeseman, who also let everybody down, but he fought Scott Fitzgerald and lost, which was a surprise to a lot of people.
Yes.
So he's fighting Brian Rose for a vacant intercontinental title thing, right? Brian Rose is not very good at boxing. Well, I mean, he's 31-5-1. So, he's got a lot more miles on the clock than Mr. 9 fights Fowler. But I mean, it'll be interesting to see how Fowler comes back after his loss, but it's they haven't done anything to push his limits. I think this is a kind of easy fight for him,
Yeah, it's a fight to be expected to win. Yeah. I'm just looking at his Rose's record. He's got losses to Matt Macklin and Jack Arnfield fairly recently. And then further in the past, Demetrius Andrade.
Interesting. That is interesting, actually.
We'll see how he gets on. I think he has the most spectacular mugshot on BoxRec. If anyone's at a computer while you're listening or on your phone, look up Brian Rose.
I know.
Brian Rose on BoxRec.
I know.
It's quite the expression he's got going on. I think someone might be tickling his balls as the photo is being taken.
Totally. Now, we also have Scotland's own, hailing from Airdrie, of all places, Martin Bakolie.
Has Martin Bakolie been claimed as Scottish?
He lives in... I think we can claim him. He's from the Congo, but, now he lives in Airdrie.
Congolese, or he's... Yeah.
So
but he's not he's not got Scottish or British citizenship or anything.
I don't think
is
so.
saying I'm a Congolese person.
He is,
yeah.
But he turned up in Airdrie and he went, "What a fucking shithole!"
I miss home.
I miss home.
I miss the war-torn Democratic Republic of Congo. It's not as dilapidated as Airdrie.
No. Oh God. So he's fighting a guy, Italo Pereira, who's an Ecuadorian fighter with 11 fights, 4 in. So you would expect Bakolie to win this.
Oh, this is a tomato.
Yeah.
No offense. No offense to Pereira's followers, fans, relatives, but he's not very good.
No, he's not. And Lewis Ritson is back in action.
Yeah, he was supposed to be fighting Joe Hughes, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. But Hughes has pulled out injured, so I don't even know if have they announced his replacement. But it's going to be someone rubbish. Last minute
replacement. They have announced it. It's Marek Jedrzejowski, right?
Did you have a stroke halfway through saying that?
No, I think this guy, he's a Polish gentleman. So he's only got 14 fights. I think they've just gone, who can he fight, so we don't let the card fall apart. So
yeah, it's what it happens. Mm-hmm. He's got to fight someone. You're not going to get a high level dangerous guy to step in at the very last minute. It's what happens. It's okay.
Yeah.
It could be an entertaining card.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be nice sitting at the campsite, getting eaten by midgies, having a few beers before we walk off to our deaths.
What a way to go. Watching our last night before a certain death, we're watching Lewis Ritson fight someone completely unknown, then followed by Martin Bakolie fighting someone completely unknown, then a levels fight between Anthony Fowler and Brian Rose. Brilliant. Don't want a pay-per-view card or nothing.
That'll do us, man,
I'll do us. That and a couple of cans of Tennants will be perfect.
Streaming it tethered to my laptop on 4G.
Yeah. With ropey buffering because the signal's so bad. Oh, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be absolutely brilliant.
They write about this sort of stuff. This is how people want to go. So then if we make it into Saturday, right? If we make it back, we have a treat on our hands. Because we get to see whether or not Michael Conlin walks in with more Ra music.
Yeah, the controversy surrounding his entrance will definitely be the most interesting thing regarding the fight, the walkover fight that he will definitely have against Diego Alberto Ruiz. This was supposed to be super interesting because the boy that beat him at the Olympics, Vladimir Nikitin, who they had beef, was supposed to be fighting him, but he pulled out injured. Nikitin, I think, has struggled, if I remember correctly, has struggled in a couple of his professional fights, and he's only had 3 or 4. Yeah. So I don't think he's actually converted to professional ranks very well. So I think it was going to be a bit of a pasting for him, but this will be even more so because he's a late replacement. So I think it'll be more about the occasion and the event and the massive, overwhelming sense of sectarianism that will fill the arena. That will be entertaining.
Totally. Oh, it'd be unbelievable, man. Honestly, I do wonder, which of the rebel IRA songs he'll walk out to on Saturday night. There are a few.
I think they might have devised a chant about relating to a united Ireland in the face of a hard Brexit.
Oh, yeah, of course. We don't want no backstop. That'll be like what he'll say on his way. He'll be like, "Oh, boys, we don't want a backstop, do we? No. What we want is we want to kill them all." That's
not very constructive.
It's not very constructive.
It's only a joke.
It is only a joke, and do you know what else wasn't constructive?
Basically our entire podcast.
Well, I was gonna say Theresa May's negotiating tactics, but yeah, that too. Oh shit!
Do you know? I find it interesting. This is definitely off topic, but Boris Johnson's come in and he's going, "I'm going to give you some more, and I'm going to give you some more, and I'm going to give you some more, and this is not just me trying to curry favour when I fuck you all over by crashing us out of a relationship with our biggest trading partner. That's not what I'm doing. You're definitely all going to have more money that I'm plucking out my fairy bottom."
Yeah, I know. It's really funny. Like how to politique.
It's interesting.
How to politique.
Yeah.
Now, talking about politique, let's move into overnight on Saturday. We've got Kownacki against Areola. Oh, now this is a fight to walk off to your death to.
Do you think?
Well,
I think it's more so, but I'm not sure entirely. It wouldn't be my first choice for a death fight.
No. But I think actually it could be interesting. I really do want to see Kownacki back in action and see whether or not he's actually, improving. Obviously, Areola isn't the best fighter in the world, but he is a seasoned fighter, big guy. Whether or not he can hold Kownacki's power is going to be really interesting, I think.
Yeah. I'm going to go for... Should we do a... No, we won't... Well, I've had all the beers by then, so there's no. Well, I can bet a beer on it, but it'll have to be for next time.
Okay.
I would make a prediction, and we can see who's closer. I'm going. Kownacki stops him in 6.
Okay, I'm gonna say Kownacki stops him in 4.
Okay,
I'm gonna go with that. Actually,
I thought you were going the other way.
No. I mean, Areola, he's good, but he's lost against most of the top guys. He's a gatekeeper. So this...
And he's an aging...
He's an aging gatekeeper. He's an aging gatekeeper. So it's interesting to see, what sort of level is Kownacki at? If he smashes through Areola in 4, I'd say, yeah, he's at a pretty decent level.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's smashed through a few guys, has he? Mm-hmm. Kownacki's entertaining. Kownacki's the fighter that we thought Joyce was going to be, but probably isn't, I think.
I think Kownacki's the fighter that Dave Allen aspires to be.
He's gone back on his retirement, by the way.
Of course he fucking has, man. His concussion went down.
He's like, oh, that's me, and my health's been in terminal decline for X number of months. And then he's like, actually, I think I'm all right now. I'm like, well, what you said can't be true then.
Yeah, totally.
So make up your fucking mind. Totally. What's this?
Totally.
Dear, oh dear.
So, do you want to know something interesting? Right? I'm going to tell
Always.
you. I'm going to drop you some crazy interesting shit right here. Okay?
Right.
Do you know who Adam Kownacki has fought? He has fought Mr. Did a drum roll, please? Italo Pereira.
Oh, has he?
Yes. Beat him, obviously, but beat him quite early on in his career. But again, relatively interesting. Is Kownacki the new Danny Williams? Who knows? Right. with all that shit, let's move on to what the F went wrong last week.
I think we're not going to get away with saying it was a series of sound effects, right? So for the listeners, to paint the picture, what I normally do is because I have a very difficult and troubled young man as my son. What I normally do is try and record downstairs away from the nails scraping in his door that I've locked him shut and the blood curdling wails as he tries to escape his room. So I record downstairs, and my wife likes to go out. She's quite green fingered. She likes to go out. So there's one point in the episode where you can hear like a sequence of noises, which is her trying to open the back door and then go out and then close the back door very discreetly, and it's just like. And the weird thing is, we've got like a completely modern door, so I don't even know how she managed to create those noises from it.
It's whenever you try and be silent, that's when you make the most noise.
For sure. I know. And that's exactly what she did. You sounded like you were drinking from a water bottle at one point.
I was, because actually,
my thirst,
man. I can't, it was some thirsty work last week, so I had to have a sip of water.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And Ted.
And the dog. Ted chimed in.
He had his things to say about the boxing. So yeah, you can't avoid that, man. Boy likes to bark.
I know. We're keeping it real, right?
Keeping it real. Yeah.
Now, I made reference to Deveryachenko. Now, I don't think this has been confirmed yet. I've still not seen this has been confirmed, but it seems very likely that he's going to be the next man to fight Canelo. Mm-hmm. And then we spoke about, I think I made reference to the fact that, well, he will be competitive. He is a pretty top-rated fighter. And I couldn't remember. I knew he'd been beaten by Jacobs, but I couldn't remember the specifics. But he lost 115, 112, 115, 112, 113, 114 split decision defeat to Jacobs. So wafer thin. So he will be competitive in theory against Canelo, but I wouldn't expect him to win. Whatevs.
It's a cop out.
Lopez was whining like a little biatch about being a little biatch and having to fight big biatches. Do you remember last week?
Yes, he did.
He said, "I'm not fighting big boys anymore. Not fair, too big." Is basically what he said. So just for the sort of to put the meat on those bones, he didn't enjoy fighting Nakatani, a lanky 5'11". Lopez himself was 5'8". Luke Campbell is 5'9", Lomachenko is 5'7", and Comey is 5'8". So Nakatani is a little bit taller, but he's not towering above him. He's 3 inches taller. And don't be all chatting in about reach and all this jibber jabber stuff. Nakatani is 3 inches taller, but it's not like heavyweights fight people that are 6, 8 inches taller. How do you think anyone that has to fight Tyson Fury feels? They're not giving up 3 inches.
Yeah, so totally. Well, let's move on to some random news. All the boxers are ganging up on the WBC and saying they're a bunch of fucking idiots for the franchise thing. They're all mocking them relentlessly this week. It's true though. It's bullshit. It's bullshit.
Arm's been at it. Yeah. I'm surprised at the fruitiness of some of the language that's been bandied about. I think some of these guys are pretty. They like a bit of blue coloured chat.
They do indeed. And the thing is, like, the WBC or the WBC, so they're not going to go back on it. They're only just going to roll it out more. And like, people are like, well, what the fuck is the point of fighting Canelo now? Because I can't take anything off him.
Yeah. And you've been saying it for quite a while, but there is a sort of building rumor mill about the Wilder's belt going the same way, and then he gets to hold on to his indefinitely, and then it frees it up. So then, before the whole drugs failing testing scenario with Whyte, it would be a way for Whyte to somehow get a chance to win the belt without actually having to fight one of the top guys for it. So I don't know, a bit strange.
Totally.
But yeah, I think that's gathering pace, I think, isn't it? Danny Jacobs, who we mentioned before, is very likely to fight his next fight at super middle. We've talked about this before, about how he absolutely has to crash his weight to make middle, even though he's a kind of career middleweight. But I think he's kind of slightly advancing age, and the fact that he's so big for middle means that he thinks he's got a better shot at super middle, which kind of also makes sense because there's not that many. We've talked about this at length. There are not very many good fighters at super middle. There's only potentially 2 or 3 who are any kind of shakes.
Well, I mean, I just want to know who's going to fight Callum Smith.
I think everyone wants to know that. Frank Warren's been chiming in.
Of course he fucking has.
He loves a chime in, doesn't he?
He does.
He's saying it's not the first time Matchroom have been guilty of dubious practices because he's so squeaky fucking clean, isn't he? No, with regards to the whole Dillian Whyte situation. So he's sticking the boot in good.
Now, I guess we're going to have to talk about the Dillian Whyte situation, actually. Because we haven't.
To be honest, it's not had much coverage in the boxing press, so people might not have come across this, but he actually failed the drugs test. I don't know if anyone's aware.
Allegedly failed a drugs test.
No,
right?
I don't think there's any question mark that the test came back positive for something.
Well, neither anyone from Matchroom, nor Dillian Whyte themselves, nor UCAD, nor VADA have come out and said that Dillian Whyte had an adverse finding, right? It was this journalist Thomas Schauer who said, my sources tell me this is what's happened.
Here, you got yourself in some right bother on Twitter with this.
I fucking did as well, yeah. Because here's the thing, right? I think we need to
don't start it again. Go on.
We need to hold back and just wait and see what facts are fucking facts, right? Because until someone either confirms it or denies it fully, we can't really know. Now, the whispers are that there were 2 metabolites for Dianabol in his system, right?
You're stressing that this is unconfirmed by
this anyone. Is totally unconfirmed, right? This is what has been said, and that they had a hearing with UCAD before the fight where I guess there must have been some discussion about this, and he was cleared to fight by the British Board of Boxing Control and UCAD, right? See,
what I've got in my head, right, is, do you remember that song that I can't remember the guy did with Shaggy? And he...
It wasn't me.
It wasn't me. I can just see, but we found the metabolites in your system. It wasn't me.
Well,
it was full of improvised drugs. It wasn't me.
It wasn't
me. What?
Well, I think the interesting thing about this is quite curious to me is that Dillian Whyte is VADA registered. The fight was done through VADA. And I would imagine it's going to come out that his VADA tests were clean, but there's an adverse finding in UCAD, and there was more, so much testing done. How can this possibly be? I think is probably where this is all going. Since then, initially the WBC said we had no knowledge about this. They've now stripped him of the interim mandatory title.
Is it not a suspension? Right.
Suspension. Well, suspension strip, whatever. At the moment, they're saying he's not mandatory.
Pending the full investigation.
Full investigation.
Well, I read the article that the journalist that broke the story, Hauser, had put on, and he was saying that UCAD's stance on this was that because there's a due process to go through, that until that's concluded, they can't say, well, no, you can't ban them. Now, I guess there's occasions where people have been banned after the fight, during which they were, in the build up to which they were tested and tested positive. But for me, well, actually, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, so I don't want to talk about it right now, or I can run into whatever. I'll talk about it in a second. Yeah,
but I think what I find interesting about this is that obviously Canelo failed a drug test, wasn't stripped of anything.
No.
I mean, he all out failed a drug test. Ortiz failed 2, and he was still mandatory. So, it's WBC playing WBC games, I think.
Yeah, well, I agree. We'll see what the kind of conclusion of this piece is, but yeah, I do agree. It seems to be, Can I talk about it now? Have we got any more random news? I feel like it's just bleeding into my grinding gears.
We don't. All right, Andy. Well, on that note, do you want to tell me what grinds your gears this week?
You know what really grinds my gears?
Yeah, and it will come as a surprise to you that I want to talk a little bit about the drug test scenario.
Deal.
Right, but the specifics about what grind my gears regarding this is the lack of clarity about this. Like, so I'm convinced that some other bodies, if they were responsible for drug testing, i.e. if the fight was in somewhere else other than UK, would take the view that a failed drugs test would lead automatically to a suspension pending investigation, and therefore you wouldn't be allowed to fight, right? But what they've done here is, I think, as far as I'm understanding, is that there has been some form of test which requires some form of adverse finding in a test which will require some explanation, and whether or not that comes out as, oh well, look, you know, you're guilty or you're not. In this instance, the test is still proven, or the test is still flagged something positive, and he's still been able to go ahead and fight. Like, say the test was completely awash with whichever the most severe form of like steroids or like, you know, performance enhancing drugs they could be. Say he was like absolutely packed to the rafters with stuff that was going to make him like, this is a hypothetical, that was going to make him like fucking Superman, right? You know, do they then, is the process still the same? It's like, well, and say you had like 20 in the system, right? Do they then still adopt the same line of saying, well, look, until the due process is complete, we're not going to take any action, or, you know, be it like suspension or anything like that. So until that process is concluded, he can carry on fighting as normal, even though he is full to the brim with PEDs. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Are they making a preemptive judgment about the severity of the finding that hasn't yet been concluded? Because if they are, they're kind of contradicting their own process, if you see what I mean. And I've got a feeling that if he was awash with drugs, blah blah blah, loads and loads of ones, then it might have been a different story. So they're kind of preempting their own investigation, I think would be the case. And I think there would need to be consistency across all of the governing bodies. And I think it's also a bit weird that he's fighting for a belt and the governing body aren't made aware that he's failed a drugs test when that belt's at stake. Or the opponent. I think the opponent should be able to say, well, look, this is an adverse finding. Given that it's happened, what do you want to do? And have some. Do you not think so? Like, so because he's the one endangering his life. I think this whole performance enhancing thing is endangering people's life is like a tiny bit spurious an argument. I'm not completely sold on it as an argument. But even still, I think that if your opponent fails a test, you should be informed and have the opportunity to say, well, tell me all that you know about it. Let's see what he's saying about it, and then I can make a decision as to whether I want to go ahead with the fight. Surely you've got to do that. Like,
well, what I don't understand about this, right, actually, is as far as I'm aware, UCAD are not doing their own processes. Okay?
What do you mean?
So let's say I'm a track athlete, or I'm a weightlifter, or whatever. Okay? If I have an adverse finding, I am suspended from my sport completely until the investigation and what have you is completed.
This was my point.
So, like, I don't understand why this is different in the case of boxing. I just don't understand it. Like, and maybe it's because of the murky area between the fact that he's actually, like, being tested simultaneously by another body. So, you know, they're like, well, maybe there's contamination or something. I mean, it is a real strange one.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bit, but that's an interesting point you make, because obviously they have a responsibility. Yeah, imagine the furore there would be if an Olympic sprinter on the eve of the 100-meter finals returned a positive test, right, and then was allowed to compete and won, and then everyone was like, well, when did he do the test? Oh, well, he did it like yesterday. What, before it? Yeah, and he tested positive. Yeah, and you let him run anyway. Yep, and he won the gold medal. Yep. Yeah. So we're told, like, people would be like, well, he shouldn't have been able to run. Of course he shouldn't. You know what I mean? So it's like, I totally agree with what you're saying, because it's just, you would think that would be the process in place.
Yes, exactly. So it just seems really, really, really strange to me, Andy. The whole thing.
I agree. I think what chuffs me off as well with regards to this is how it's all kind of this like stonewalling, like closed door process. Like, how are the governing bodies not making statements on this? Like, you can't just shut up shop and go, we're not talking about it. What?
Yeah,
you can't do it when it's out in the press, when there's people reporting on it saying it's failed, when there's rumours flying around about what the failures were on, and people are in this kind of complete limbo land. You can't just be like, well, we're not going to talk about it. Like, well, you fucking should, because you're making this all look ridiculous.
I totally agree, man. I totally agree. There's just like, I think there's two. The problem is that because there's so little fact, people are just filling in the gaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, which is what's going to happen. Yeah. If for whatever reason, there was an adverse finding and Matchroom let it go ahead, I will be shocked if Oscar Rivas doesn't sue Matchroom for everything they've got, because they basically knew that there was a chance his life was at risk, even more than usually entering a boxing ring, and just went ahead anyway. Imagine something had happened and it did come out there was a failed test. Well,
UCAD would be fucked. Eddie Hearn would be fucked. Everybody would be fucked.
The British Boxing Board of Control, because they were complicit. Obviously, they allowed it to go ahead. I think, in theory, they would be the most obvious candidate to sue, but I'm sure they don't have as much money as Matchroom.
No, exactly. And it's not just that. Sky, the relationship with Sky and Matchroom. If I'm Sky executives, I'm like, hold on, Eddie. You gotta fucking bring us in on this shit. For a while he was like, I knew nothing. Apparently he was fucking there. I don't understand it, man. I don't understand it.
I think it is, to be honest, this does not reflect well on anyone involved, and all the cloak and daggers nonsense that's going on around it now is doing nothing to kind of shine a positive light on boxing. It happens. The failed drug tests happen far too much in high-profile fights, and then all of this nonsense where it's completely opaque as to what happened for however long people decide it's best practice to do it, until we kind of get drip-fed kind of pieces of information. It's just, it's not helping. None of this helps.
No, not a little bit.
You need stronger stewardship by the governing bodies, by the British Boxing Board of Control, by a bit the WBC, in a whole bunch of ways. But you need stronger stewardship, and you need to be seen to be a bit more transparent about the process that you're undertaking. You can't just go, we're not talking about it. That's not an answer.
Totally.
You're not 4 years old. Jesus Christ. Anyway. That's an extended what grinds my gears this week. Have you got a different one, Ryan? Have you got something else to
Oh, I do. I do, Andy.
Tell me what this week grinds your gears.
You know what really grinds my gears?
Right, Andy, I'm going to tell you what grinds my gears this week, right?
Please.
What grinds my gears this week is Twitter. More specifically, boxing Twitter. Okay?
Are you wounded after your
No, I'm not wounded,
barrage?
Right? I'm totally happy to have open and honest debates with people, anywhere. But just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean that you have, you should block me, or that, I'm stupid and you're right and you're wrong, whatever. Part of life is to have different points of view with people and discuss the what ifs and the whys and blah blah blah, and I don't understand this community of people on Twitter that believe that just because you don't say the same thing as them, you are the worst thing in the entire world. Do you know what I mean? They can't just open up to oh, well, yeah, no, I see that point. And I was quite open. I was I completely understand where your points are with all this. I get where you're coming from. However, there is this other side that maybe we should keep an eye out for before we start writing things off. Before you write Dillian Whyte out as a drugs cheat because of one article, that, doesn't really have, like, any real evidence behind it, let's just make sure that, like, we have all the facts and that kind of stuff before we start, going down this rabbit hole. Because things move so quickly and, like, these kind of... we fill in gaps with narratives that we think might happen and all this sort of shit. It's not helpful for the movement of information. That's how fake news fucking happens, right? Like, standard practice for journalism is 2 sources. You get 2 sources of information before you say something has definitely happened, right? You have to corroborate that, right? You can't just go into, like, a police station and say, yeah, this guy killed this guy, I saw it. They'd be like, well, we need some corroborating evidence, actually. And they'd be like, no, but I saw it. I'm telling you. You don't believe me? You're a fucking prick. Blocked! Do you know what I mean? Like, it makes no sense. So, like, life is the exact same as it is on Twitter. So why we can't just go, like, let's have reasoned debates. Is this right? Is this wrong? How can we get more information? Who is in the wrong here? Blah, 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 blah. But it was like, this journalist is definitely right. Whatever. Fucking sucking his dick. People, like, just let him spunk all over them. Like, how do you not... Thomas Howard, look at his bio, man. He's written all this shit. He's written fuck all, man. He's writing for the... Like, if he was, like, writing for the New York Times and this was, like, a long, deep investigation about... Yeah, okay, no, this looks like pretty fucking legitimate. He's not putting his name out there, for no reason. But it was on, like, the boxing scene, right? It's not... It's not the New York Times. Okay?
Yeah, I agree. And like you're saying, if it's not corroborated and if it's... It could be that he's right about these things like 95% of the time, but I agree. Like, basically, it's not enough. It's not compelling for him to say, "Oh, but like I'm not going to tell you how I know this, but I know that this is what's happened." It's like, well, okay, fine, you're saying that, but I think it's right to have like a healthy amount of skepticism regarding it, and it could be that he's been misinformed or whatever. Maybe maybe he's right in this instance. We don't know, but the point is that it's not. The point is we're having to do the guesswork because none of the official sources are taking the responsibility that they should do. So therefore, you're relying on someone who has a reasonable amount of credibility potentially within their area, but who is not, getting official stuff, is not saying where they got it from, and is probably right, but not definitely. So we don't know.
Totally, and like, part of my skepticism was about the way in which UCAD usually informs about failed drug tests. It usually comes out and then UCAD come and say something. But UCAD were dead silent on this. And they still are. Which I think leads it to, in my imagination, thinking like, well, actually, I think there's probably like a lot more than meets the eye,
Yeah. Definitely could be. Definitely. It's an option. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how this all folds out, but it's just a bit of a hot mess right now.
Yeah, totally. Real hot mess. But I guess that is that for what grinds my gears this week.
Nice.
Yeah, totally.
Nice.
So, round up with a little bit of remember, guys, please share the podcast. Please like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Actually, do us a favor, follow us on Twitter. Let's get our Twitter numbers up, right? It'd be really handy, right? Ask your mum, your dad, follow us on Twitter, right? Please, so we can get those Twitter numbers up. But I think that's us for this week. So it's goodbye from me, Ryan.
And goodbye from me, Andrew.